the world watches and listens in horror, the peaceful pro-democracy demonstration in China comes to a violent and bloody end.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Wolves hiding nearby, whispering do or die around me. You say your last good night while I get
There is another very important phase of warfare. It has as its target not the body, but the mind of the enemy.
The target of psychological warfare is against the enemy's mind.
It is words and ideas.
The ammunition used by Psyop.
Its mission is to influence the thoughts of the enemy soldier, and at the same time
is expected and encouraged to study foreign languages and the social sciences such as history, economics, and sociology. He must have a broad and sympathetic understanding of all phases of human experience.
gripping at my skin, the walls of night closing.
But the use of this force as an integral part of combat has now taken on new form.
My last
Some posters were attempting to make a big deal about my use of the word psyop, making it seem grand and ridiculous, making it seem fantastical or even fictional. Now, listen, when the military and other agencies and other organizations have sectors within them devoted completely to psychological operations, it is a valid subject. And since the Smith-Mundt Act has been edited since 2013, it is a very valid subject. Now, if you rewatch the intro slowly, warfare is evolving. It's evolving from troops and soldiers to something else entirely. Soldiers on horses, soldiers in tanks and personnel carriers, to hostages with hoods over their heads on a camera, to music and entertainment, to practically invisible unknown surveillance and drones, to computers and networks, to agitators and protesters, to social media. So psyops in music and entertainment have been going on for decades and decades, man. Decades, for lifetimes. And there have been psyops in the same kinds of businesses. They are everywhere. All that means is psychological operation, nothing more. People make a big fantastical deal out of the word psyop. And the military has psyops divisions, you know, that span 2 television networks. All of that. Let's go over just a couple psyops that have gone on in the past. And music and entertainment gave us this.
What's my drug of choice?
And at the same time, in the same couple years, now, Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction is supposed to be a recreational heroin user. How many recreational heroin users do you know? You know, they're 1 in a million. Some dude that can get loaded on dope, you know, once a month or once every couple of weeks and not use it habitually. It's practically unheard of. And yet they're showing you that. And this psyop of this whole era of promoting heroin and bullshit like that gave us this.
This old D magazine cover brings back some painful memories for Plano. It's been 20 years since the city was rocked by heroin. Teenagers were addicted and dying, and you didn't have to live here to know it. News of the crisis spread everywhere. In fact, Rolling Stone called it the Texas Heroin Massacre.
And it didn't stop there. This started a long time ago. This started way back in the 50s with Elvis, in the 60s with all the hippie crap. Let's go back to the early 90s. Psyops gave us this.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
Straight out of Compton.
And that gave us the reality of this. So don't even try to downplay it and make Psyop seem fantastical or even fictional. It's ridiculous. The whole thing's ridiculous. You know, comically, these people pretending to have a problem with my wording are the same people who are always attempting to split hairs about the subjects that I talk about. And then they want to split the hairs of those hairs. I'm actually the one who doesn't believe the entire Psyop narrative. You know, I do believe that there are patsies in most cases. I know 100% that former testing has been weaponized and is being used to drive average people to commit insane, bizarre, or motiveless-looking crimes. For ops to be successful, they rely on a portion of the population involved to be duped. It is no different than the way that a magician works. A magician has his crew, those people who understand the theater that they are performing, and the other side is the audience. And they are dupes of the magic trick, but they are all critical performers in the event, whether they realize it or not. When magic tricks are done, there are a few people in the know, and then there are spectators. And you can be involved without knowing it. And that is what happens in a successful psyop. Just like what happens here with David Copperfield as he's being sawed in half. He's gone. But we all know that it's a magic trick. Except, what if the people in the crowd were unaware? What if they were unwilling participants or unwilling dupes? That is how this works. This is how things are promoted on television without people realizing what is happening. In music. And they repeat that when they're easily influenced kids that want to be cool. Everybody starts behaving that way. And then you have heroin epidemics. Then you have gang shootings rising by, 5,000% or whatever. It's insane. But that's a psyop. Comically, these people crying that I use the word psyop are the same people who are always attempting to split hairs about the subjects that I talk about. Like I said before. They keep splitting, it's so ridiculous. And ironically, they seem to be the same people who claim that everything is fake. So, I want you to listen very carefully to my next words because they are of the most importance. Fuck off. Now, moving on, let's go to some other subjects. So, a friend of mine went to the doctors and received a questionnaire. And I've read a lot of these in the past. They're very dangerous, they're very intrusive. And they look very innocent, but a lot of people don't realize that they are taking psychological and or political tests. A lot of them don't realize that they are taking psychological examinations. Like some pregnant women were interviewed, and they asked them, when is the last time you had a psychological evaluation? And they're like, oh, not in years. And they're like, well, you just took one 5 minutes ago in the doctor's office. And they didn't even realize it, right? So, they slip these tests into school children, in doctor's offices, and they ask flat-out illegal shit and scary shit. So let's go over some of the questions. Unfortunately, the first 3 questions can't be seen. I would like to know the first 3. But let's go over these. Question number 4 is, Are you easily able to get enough healthy food? Now, that can seem really nice that they want to know if you're able to get healthy food, but they really don't care. Go to your local grocery store and look around and see if they care if you get healthy food or not, right? Number 5 is, do you drink a soda, juice drink, sports, or energy drink most days of the week? This is like an advertising thing. They want to know what you're drinking. Do you often eat too much or too little food? It almost sounds like they're finding out ways to blame things on other things that are happening. Are you concerned about your weight? Then the next question is, do you exercise or spend time doing activities such as walking, gardening, swimming for a half an hour a day? Now this is where it gets very, very interesting. Pay attention to this. Next question is, do you feel safe where you live? Very, very strange question coming from a doctor. Why do they want to know that? And is it really the doctor that's handing you the slip, or is somebody coming back to collect it? Where is the information going? Tell us. Have you had any car accidents lately? Interesting question. As if they want to know if something is having the effect that is intended to have the effect. It says, have you been hit, slapped, kicked, or physically hurt by somebody in the last year? Very strange question. Think about that. The next question goes back to driving. Do you always wear a seatbelt when driving or riding in a car? Very strange question coming from a doctor. Okay? I'm going to tell you a story in a minute. And this story is very, very strange, and it kind of goes with this. So the next question to this, after asking if you wear a seatbelt when you're driving, it asks, do you keep a gun in your house or place where you live? That is flat out illegal to ask somebody that question. And if you don't believe me, I want you to walk to your local police department or drive, and you tell them right there that you want to go over the local handgun registry in your area and see what they say to you when you ask to look at it. That is totally and completely illegal. After it asks if you have a gun in your house, it asks, do you brush and floss your teeth daily? And then right after that, it says, do you often feel sad, hopeless, angry, or worried, which is a typical psychological evaluation question. Then it asks another one, do you often have trouble sleeping? Then the next one, do you smoke or chew tobacco? See, people don't realize that the information that they can get out of all this. Do friends or family members smoke in your house or place where you live? Now, that's a great question, because secondhand smoke, man. Secondhand smoke. Not the stuff that's coming down on us from above, but secondhand smoke. If that's on your file, something comes up with you and they can go, oh, well, here he said he was around secondhand smoke all the time. So what was coming down on him doesn't have anything to do with this. It was secondhand smoke. Same thing with sodas and energy drinks and all that crap. Too much or too little food could be used for that. Same thing with the healthy food. Do you get healthy food? Same thing with exercise. See, these can be blamed on things. But the scariest one was the out of the blue. Flat out of the blue. Do you have a gun in your house or a place that you live? Who in their right mind would give out that information, yes or no? And people do this all the time because a doctor handed it to them. Do not have anything to do with these tests. Refuse to fill them out. And that's the best advice I can give you. From what I see here, it says DHCS. So that is the Department of Healthcare Services asking those questions. Very, very intrusive. You know, all of this can be used to blame deaths on that happen, whatever. But again, if you think that I'm bullshitting you, walk down to your police department and tell them that you want to see the local handgun registry and see what they tell you. They'll tell you to fuck off. You might even get hung up or locked up for it if they think that you're suspicious enough. But again, I would not take part in these questionnaires. I just wouldn't. Now, I'm going to tell you this story because it has to do with doctors and these intrusive questions and all that. Before my dad passed away, he had a doctor for a short period of time who was a semi-holistic doctor. And what I mean by that is he prescribed medications, but he wasn't like one of these incentivized drug dealers who just wanted to push medication on everybody. He was actually, kind of a doctor. Most are not these days, but, from what he told me, he was kind of doctorish, if you can get what I'm saying there. But anyway, he was obsessed with asking questions about guns to people who came into his office. And he would tell them, if you've got a gun, you got to lock it up. Do you have grandkids? You got to lock it up. Do you have children? You got to lock them up. You got to lock those guns up. Very weird how obsessed he was about telling people to lock their guns up, and he would pretty much frown on people even having a weapon. And it was almost like half of his business was asking questions about guns. My dad was really surprised about that. It's not like his patients were walking in with guns strapped to their waists and it was like a conversation piece. He was just injecting this out of the blue and asking questions, right? Very, very strange. Well, let me tell you what happened here. And you have to remember that this guy was semi-holistic. And again, what I mean by that is he did prescribe medications. He wasn't, some guy pushing Eastern medicine or something. He just didn't push these hardcore medications all the time on people. Let's say that somebody had a mild form of diabetes. They would try natural ways, diet-based ways of changing this before they even considered medication, which is the way it should be done. That's important to remember, because what happened to him was crazy. My dad didn't even see him for that long, and he saw doctors only when he had to anyway. Maybe a year, 9 months to a year after he saw this guy, and this guy was always telling people to either get rid of their guns or lock them up. This guy, this doctor, commits suicide, right? And how did he do it? He did it with a pistol to his head and pulled the trigger. Now, something doesn't smell right with that to me. It is so bizarre that I can't even wrap my head around it. It's like a guy who is against people owning pit bulls, and he ends up with a pit bull in his house and gets mauled by it and dies, right? I mean, it is out there nuts. Every time my dad walked in there was never, ever part of the conversation. He was just injecting gun talk. He was injecting gun talk into these visits with people, with everybody, not just my dad, and was talking about guns, probably his male patients, right? And then he ends up taking himself out with a gun. How fucking weird is that? So that's something to think about, man. Something to think about. So not only are they asking these really, really intrusive questions, but then when it gets down into it, the people that are anti and talking about it end up taking themselves out with it somehow. Very strange. And that's it for now. Look out for Charlie.
Then you see these bands of very distinct cloud cover moving into the region. That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff. Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic or even metallicized paper products, but it's used as an anti-radar. Now, they won't confirm that, but I was in the Marine Corps for many years, and I'll tell you right now, that's what it is.
Look out for Charlie.